The clock is ticking for families facing eviction.
We've heard stories of people across our area struggling to pay that rent check.
It was a mom that worked for Blue Valley School District, driving a bus, had her job for 14 years. And she barely made it week to week, but after her unemployment benefits ran out, she eventually was evicted and her and her daughter were sleeping in a truck.
Awful. That mother and daughter now have a new home, by the way, but for thousands of other people, the federal rent moratorium is set to end December 31st.
This was a measure designed to protect tenants during the pandemic, and right now, Mayor Quentin Lucas is pushing for that to be extended in Kansas City. But all new this morning on 41 Action News Today, I-Team reporter Kat Reed found it didn't stop some people from losing their homes.
Did you think that you were going to be protected by the moratorium for being evicted?
I absolutely did.
For Andrea Messina, the road to eviction was a complicated one. She moved into this South Kansas City house in 2018 and says things got difficult when she lost her job later that year. She found a new one, but it paid significantly less. A friend stepped up to help her financially. Then,
when the pandemic came, I had some support that was helping me get the rent paid. That support ended up losing their job.
At the same time, she says plumbing problems at the house weren't getting fixed.
And it got to a point that with the pandemic, money just got real tight. And I was like, you know what? If the landlord's not going to fix the property, then I'm not going to pay him and focus on getting other bills caught up.
Despite numerous calls, an attorney for Messina's landlord did not get back to us. But let's take a broader look at the federal moratorium on evictions.
If you've declared that you've been impacted by COVID-19 and you cannot pay your rent because of it, that's what it protects you from in terms of eviction.
To be covered, the renter must also use best efforts to obtain government assistance for rent and attempt to make timely partial payments. Tenants have to give their landlord a signed CDC declaration form, too.
Well, I had never heard of, having to file this additional paperwork with your landlord.
They're not finding it, and that's the issue.
KC Tenants, an organization that helps ensure people have a safe, affordable place to live, has been spending Saturdays handing out the forms in neighborhoods across the city. Tenants fellow Shawnice Taylor says some landlords have been giving their tenants this information, too. Still,
it doesn't apply to every single tenant.
Tenants can still be evicted for other reasons, like landlord complaints. Data the I-Team obtained from the 16th Circuit shows 465 writs for housing evictions were issued from the start of the moratorium in September through the end of November. However, that number doesn't reflect tenants who voluntarily left earlier in the eviction process, like after a case was filed. With the moratorium ending in just weeks, the United Way is seeing an influx of calls from people seeking help.
I had one of our partner agencies that yesterday alone processed 92 households and spent their entirety of the remainder of their CARES Act allocation.
Some CARES Act funds are still available.
We also do worry about the impact on, our small business owners who are landlords where, they can't necessarily absorb the loss of revenue that comes when the moratorium happens.
But the money must be spent by December 30th.
So if you've been impacted by COVID and have a need for assistance, now is the time to be calling, because I also can't guarantee that funding will be available in 2 weeks because agencies are under pressure to spend it.
Andrea Messina was evicted in October. She's now struggling to find a new place to live and says 2 landlords have turned her down because she has an eviction on her record.
I'm terrified that I'm going to end up on the streets.
That must be really hard to deal with.
It's scary. It's very scary.
A fear other tenants share as January looms closer. I'm consumer I-Team reporter Kat Reed, 41 Action News Today.
A terrifying time for so many families. It's important to also point out the pressure housing providers are under right now. The KC Regional Housing Alliance did a survey of landlords in the metro. That analysis found 38% of their tenants were late or unable to pay rent. Almost half of the landlords said that they plan to sell some or all of their rental properties because of losses in rental income.